His Honor and I are delighted to welcome the members of the Young Company Production Association and their families and supporters, and members of our Canadian military family, our distinguished veterans and legionnaires to historic Government House for an afternoon of song and dramatization. Today we are here to pay tribute to the past, to recognize the present, and to look to the future. We are so pleased that so many veterans have made a special effort to join us today, as we remember those who sacrificed their lives or carried the burden of the memory of war. We share a very special moment with you as you, our veterans, support the achievements of our Nova Scotian youth. And we are equally proud of the respect that our young Nova Scotians demonstrate for your contribution to our society. I realize that many of you have traveled to Halifax for this event because the Young Company production is located in the Valley, and there are many parents here and many supporters. We thank you for making this trip, and if it's your first time to Government House, I know that you have just begun to discover the charm of this 200-year home. There are few buildings in all of Canada that compare to this magnificent Georgian structure, which is well deserving of its status as a National Heritage Site. As the official residence in Nova Scotia of the monarchy, Government House has served this purpose without interruption for 2 centuries. And we are indeed fortunate that our government has maintained its grandeur. In this heritage setting, it's indeed important that we recognize the present through the arts as we look to the future of the province. We invite all of you to make yourselves comfortable and to enjoy the surroundings. My aides-de-camp will be pleased to assist you. This house belongs to all of you, to the people of the province. And it is with great pleasure that we showcase the talented performers of the Young Company Productions Association. This past year, I had the privilege of participating in one of their plays. I was a narrator in Peter Pan, one of the productions of the Young Company. The talent, the respect for heritage, the community spirit, and the self-confidence of our youth is most impressive. And I know that you are in for a rare treat indeed today. I want to congratulate and thank the vision and the leadership of the artistic director, who you will meet shortly, John Brown, and the association's board of governors and their secretary, Dave Barrett, who has worked closely in this house to bring this production to fruition. They are the ones who have provided the opportunity for our youth to give back to community through the arts with the fullness of their hearts. And of course, it's the encouragement and the support of the children's parents and their families who motivate our young people to be the very best that they can be. And we thank you for the time that you give to ensure that your children meet their responsibilities that they have agreed to do. Today's production of Mudsongs, an emotional tribute to the sacrifice and the triumph of soldiers during World War I, follows the events of their lives. Mudsongs, as you will see, gives our youth a better understanding of how world events have shaped the history of Canada and better enable them to take their place in society and appreciate the freedoms that we enjoy. I invite all of you to sit back and to enjoy the presentation of Mudsongs by the Young Company Production Association. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will now call upon Mr. John Brown to say a few words.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I want to tell you what an honor and a privilege it is to do this particular show in this particular house at the invitation of the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. we thank you. It's truly an honor. I have been warned to keep this short. Some of my introductory notes are longer than the 2-hour show. So I suggest that if you have a few moments today, if you look inside your program, you will see what Young Company is all about. You will see our history. You will see the history of this show and our goals for being in existence. Besides being a theatrical company, we are educationally based, recreationally based, and historically based. We are one of the few after-school programs in a very rural area of this province, and this particular group provides the opportunity for teens and preteens between the ages of 6 and 19, not only to study theater, but to sometimes explore our history through the theatrical arts. We have done the Helen Craig musical, The Collector, and we have done our musical on Alexander Graham Bell, and Mudsongs is our third step into looking at the history of our province. On a personal note, I'd like you to take a look at the inner story called Diane's Dad, when at your own convenience. Diane is in the audience tonight with her sons. Diane never knew how much her father meant to me as we grew up together, and I was the next door neighbor who constantly knocked on the door and bugged him. But without Diane's dad, there certainly would be no Mudsongs. Mr. Sutherland's grandsons are in the audience today. They never knew their grandfather. I hope that at the end of the presentation, they will be a little bit closer to him in spirit. Because every part of the show is real, taken from a diary, taken from a letter, every single event is the gospel truth, we ask that you do not applaud after the songs or after the speeches, but save your appreciation till the end of the show. We do that deliberately because we do not want this to become merely a theatrical event. We want it to be in the spirit of November 11th. We do not want to become these people up here. That is why it is staged as a dramatic reading. We want to relive the experiences that those who went before lived in order for us to live in this conflict-free period of time that most Canadians live.
Yonge Street was crowded. The official declaration was posted at 7 o'clock. For a minute, the big crowd stood silent. Then all of a sudden, a cheer broke. It wasn't a cheer for the war, but for the King, for Britain, and for victory. Heads were bared, and the national anthem was sung. Sung with a significance it hadn't possessed in years.
I'll always remember the first night war was declared. We were all down in the armories, hundreds of us. I was a member of the 48th Band. Just after it was announced that Canada was indeed at war, we all went into the crowd, began to play Rule Britannia.
Away we went, down the street, and the crowds followed. A French flag came on the scene, and then some Union Jacks. All of a sudden, we couldn't get through the traffic. People were pulling the poles of streetcars and mobbing us. You would have thought we was coming back from a war. It's not going to one.
It isn't enough to read the daily papers. It isn't enough to talk about the war. It isn't enough to say that Britain's going to win the day, or spout about the cause we're fighting for. It's something more than talk today that's needed. It's something more than cheering for the flag. Above the battlefield, old England cries, "Fall in!"
poster. And I thought of the hands that had penned its call. Fat civilians wishing they could go and fight the Hun. Oh, but can't you see them thanking God that they are over 41? Girls with feathers sing vulgar songs. Washy verse on England's knee. God, don't we damn well know how that message ought to read. Lads, you're wanted. Over there, come shiver in the morning dew. More poor devils like yourselves waiting to be killed by you. Leave the harlots still to sing comic songs about the Hun, and leave the fat old men to say, now we've got them on the run. Better 20 honest years than their dull 70. Lads, you're wanted. Come and learn to live and die like honest men. Take your risk of life and limb underneath the clear blue sky. Live fast and go out quick. Lads, you're wanted. Come and die.
Montreal, Quebec, August the 15th, 1914. I call for volunteers. Volunteers, mark you. I've ensured that this shall be a purely volunteer contingent. Not a man will be accepted but of his own free will, and not a married man will leave Canada without the consent of his wife and family. I have no fears as to the outcome of this war. If the millions in Germany cannot be driven back by this first contingent, I feel sure I voice the sentiments of all Canadians when I say, if necessary, 10, 20, or 30 more contingents will follow. We are determined the tyrant's heel shall never grind down the people of Canada.
Little girl, don't cry, he must say goodbye. Don't you hear the bugle call? And the fife and trumpet, the bellows call, where the flag waves over all. Though he loves you so, it's time for him to go, and a soldier in he you'll find. When on land or sea they need boys like he, you would not have him stay behind. So send him away with a smile, little girl. Brush the tears from eyes of brown. It's all for the best, and he's off with the rest of the boys from his old hometown. It may be forever you part, little girl, and it may be for only a while. But if fight, dear, he must, in our Maker we trust. So send him away with a smile.
The grub on the Saxonia was hell. After having supper, I went up and gave the sharks a feed. My first seasickness. I'd begun feeling poor around 3 p.m., but I had managed to fight it off until then. I tried to make the deck, but I couldn't. So I used a porthole. All the young boys were lying around on the deck looking like a bunch of dogs. Some not caring if the boat went to the bottom or not. They were that sick.
But Babs and Nia, they were in a brewery adjoining the River Lees, and when we got there, we removed our tunics and trousers and tied them with our identity discords so that they could be put through a delousing machine. Once inside, we were split into small groups, and each group was allotted a vat. Here we remained immersed up to the neck for 5 glorious minutes. 5 minutes, 15 seconds, a cold hose was turned on to roust out the laggards. A clean shirt, pants, and socks were handed out, and in these we returned to the first building. Now, if anyone was unable to find his deloused trousers, well, he wandered around like a lost sheep until he was given a new pair, usually yards too big. These he had to wear until he could manage to have them ripped beyond repair at the next wiring party.
Washing fails to kill lice, although, as someone said, they get an awful shock. The only way to get rid of these pests, and I've been rid of them for over a month now, is to sprinkle your underclothes with creolin, a disinfectant which our sanitary men use around the latrines. It is an extract of tar. After application, when a man begins to sweat, he passes through the torture of hell, but it was worth the suffering. What a luxury it was to lie down and sleep at night, instead of rolling and groaning, tearing madly at your flesh with your fingernails.
Trenches. They speak of trenches. Well, that's by far too romantic a word. They were ditches. Plain, ordinary ditches. And as time went by, they became filthy. I mean, we had no garbage disposal. We had no sewage disposal. You simply dug a little trench off the main trench, dug another hole, and that was your latrine. You threw everything you didn't want up, over. And if you stood at a place where with powerful binoculars you could see these so-called trenches, what you saw was a line of garbage wandering uphill and down dale for as far as the eye could see. And in this filth, men lived.
Sister Susie sewing in the kitchen on a stinger. There's miles and miles of flannel on the floor and up the stairs. And Father says it's rotten, getting mixed up in the cotton and sitting on the needles that she leaves upon the chairs. And should you knock at our street door, Ma whispers, come inside. And if you ask where Susie is, she says with loving pride, Sister Susie sewing shirts for soldiers. So skills in sewing shirts are shy young Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep with thistles than the softy soft short shirts for soldiers Sister Susie sews. Piles and piles of shirts she sends up to the soldiers, and sailors won't be jealous when they see them, not at all. And when we say her stitching, we'll send all the soldiers itching. She says our soldiers fight best with their backs against the wall. And little brother Gussie, he who lifts when he says yes, says, where's the cotton gone from off my kite? Oh, I can guess. Sister Susie sewing shirts for soldiers. She skills at sewing shirts are shy as Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep in thistles than the softy soft shirts for soldiers Sister Susie sews. I forgot to tell you that our Sister Susie's married, and when she is in sewing shirts, she's sewing other things. And little Sister Molly says, oh, Sister's bought a dolly. She's making all the clothes for it with pretty bows and strings. Says Susie, don't be silly. And she blushes and she sighs. Then Mother smiles and whispers with a twinkle in her eyes. Sister Susie sewing shirts for soldiers. So skills at sewing shirts are shy young Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep in thistles than the softy soft short shirts for soldiers Sister Susie sews. Sister Susie sewing shirts for soldiers. So skills at sewing shirts are shy young Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep in thistles than the softy soft short shirts for soldiers Sister Susie shows. Sister Susie sewing shirts for soldiers. Some skills at sewing shirts are shy young Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep in thistles than the softy soft short shirts for soldiers Sister Susie shows.
The moment this war broke out, I felt I had an absolute necessity to take part in it. Why should I be pampered at my dear home while millions of young men are giving their lives for their country?
I thought the whole matter over, and I'm prepared to die. It wasn't an easy matter to decide. I may go through the campaign in safety, or be buried with the brave lads in France. But I faced the question, and the answer came. And here I am in the King's uniform. I have no doubt this is the right and proper thing to do.
I'm sitting by the fireside as the evening shadows fall, gazing idly at the pipe rack hanging sideways on the wall. Underneath it in the corner, I can see an empty chair and a pair of well-worn slippers that are waiting for you there. They remind me that across the seas you've gone, and I am left alone to carry on. Somewhere in France, yonder across the sea, while I am here, fondly dreaming of you, you there are dreaming of me. For you will know, where'er you go, my heart is faithful and true. Though you're far, far away, every hour of the day, I am somewhere in France with you.
If you've read your history, you're bound to know that we've always held our own with every foe. We've always brought the bacon home no matter what they've done. But we don't want the bacon now, we're headed for the hunt.
We don't want the bacon, no we don't want the bacon. What we want is a piece of the Rhine. We'll crown Bill the Kaiser with a bottle of Budweiser. We'll have a wonderful time. And we'll ham the gross, we'll shout Bass's Los as we hit that Hindenburg line. Fine! We don't want the bacon, no we don't want the bacon. What we want is a piece of the Rhine.
When first this war began, they said we had no chance. They couldn't figure how we'd get our men to France. But they would soon discover us Canucks are out to win. We've got the Fritzies on the run.
We're headed for Berlin. We don't want the bacon, no we don't want the bacon. What we want is a piece of the Rhine. We'll crown Bill the Kaiser with a bottle of Budweiser. We'll have a wonderful time. Oh, we'll ham the roast, we'll shout Bass's Los as we hit the Hindenburg line. Fine! We don't want the bacon, no we don't want the bacon. What we want is a piece of the Rhine. We don't want the bacon, no we don't want the bacon. What we want is a piece of the Rhine.
No writer can describe a battle, and he who says that he does not feel nervous when ordered to charge brags. After Termonde and Louvain, we scattered and rode precipitately here and there trying to reach Brussels. We chummed up, and as our horses were quite done in, we decided to dismount and rest. After some rest, and while discussing our next move, we noticed a faint light down the vale. We immediately made for that light. We arrived at a house, front door open, windows shattered, roof nearly off. No one to be seen. We then went into the cellar and there found what was hardly believable. 3 creatures, one partially dressed, dead, leaning against a wall, a child clinging to her. Another woman beside them, quite unconscious. We were debating what to do for the child when we were surprised by the entry of 2 Germans. Then began a strife impossible to describe. The intruders were eventually overcome and killed. When we calmed down a bit, we were horrified to find the child's head beaten to a pulp and the second woman now dead. We covered the poor creatures as best we could, and since we could do no more, we decided to rest. Found plenty of bread, dry fish, pickles, even a few bottles of beer. We lit another candle, and taking this bit of paper and my indispensable bottle of ink, I squatted down and took a record of this horrid scene. Please, don't be too severe on my artistic attempts, for I am out of it. It is, as I saw it. God help me.
Where are the lads of the village tonight? Where are the nuts we knew? In Piccadilly or Leicester Square? No, not there. No, not there. They're taking a trip on the continent with their rifles and their bayonets bright. Facing danger gladly where they're needed badly. That's where they are tonight. The West End's not the same tonight. The lights aren't shining quite so bright. That's what I hear the little lady say. To give a glad eye is a crime, for it's a sad eye all the time. The dear lads of the village are away. The barmaid and she tries to wink, but with a tear to pass to blink, and won't be ashamed to tell you why. Though the mob their flags are wagging, singing jingle songs and bragging, all the girls will ask each other with a sigh. Where are the lads of the village tonight? Where are the nuts we knew? In Piccadilly or Leicester Square? No, not there. No, not there. They're taking a trip on the continent with their rifles and their bayonets bright. Facing danger gladly where they're needed badly. That's where they are tonight. Where are the lads of the village tonight? Where are the nuts we knew? In Piccadilly or Leicester Square? No, not there. No, not there. They're taking a trip on the continent with their rifles and their bayonets bright. Facing danger gladly where they're needed badly. That's where they are. That's where they are. That's where they are tonight.
A.m. on a hot, still night.
No, nurse. I can't sleep. Sit with me a little, will you, nurse?
The words were whispered very low. Down the long length of the ward, no one else was stirring, and the bed in which the speaker lay had screens all around it. He had not been in hospital long, but he was more ill than he knew, being threatened with tetanus and quite blind. But it was only this morning they had told him of his blindness.
When will they take away the bandages so that I can see again?
These were the words he said at the conclusion of each dressing.
I do want to see. Why, I haven't even seen you, nurse.
And he would laugh, as though the remark was of real humor. But today they broke it to him. And in the little kitchen off the ward, I listened while his day nurse told him. How did he take it? I asked at length.
Just asked if they were certain there was no hope. That was all. But he hasn't spoken since.
So I waited beside him, a little draft blowing upon us from an open window nearby.
Nurse, you know I am to be blind always?
Yes, I answered, and took one of his hands in mine. But after a little while, I drew a chair beside his bed, and we talked in whispers about France,
for it amused him to describe some of the places in which he had been billeted. Then he was hungry, and I fed him hot toast and hot milk, much sweetened.
It will be a month tomorrow since I was hit.
He said this as he crunched his last piece of toast.
All that time before is like a quite different life.
Then he added,
Nurse, I say, you won't forget my early morning tea. You did forget yesterday.
and with those last words, he stretched his hand towards me, his way of discovering if I was offended. He died yesterday morning, the blind boy I've become so fond of.
There's a long, long trail winding into the land of my dreams, where the nightingales are singing and the white moon beams. There's a long, long night of waiting until my dreams all come true. Till the day when I'll be gone.
For a while, after they had told me, I stood idle and listened to the singing.
There's a long, long trail winding into the land of my dreams, where the nightingales are singing and the white moon beams. There's a long
It echoes still in my ears,
night of
that wailing, aching chorus
until my
of the long, long trail.
come true.
All the men were singing it,
Till the day
and there,
when I'll be gone.
beneath the window, where I'd grown so used to the sight of blue draped screens, was an empty bed, white and fresh, awaiting another occupant.
Nights are long since you went away. I think about you all through the day, my buddy, nobody quite so true. Miss your voice, the touch of your hand. Just long to know that you understand, my buddy, your buddy. This is you. Here comes a whiz bang.
Hush. Here comes the whiz bang. Hush. Here comes the whiz bang. Now you soldier boys, get down those stairs, down in the dugout and say your prayers. Hush. Here comes a whiz bang. It's making straight for you, and you'll see all the wonders of no man's land if that whiz bang hits you. Hush.
Here comes a whiz bang, hush. Here comes a whiz bang. Now you soldier boys, get down those stairs, down in the dugout and say your prayers. Hush. Here comes a whiz bang, and it's making straight for you,
Madam, I regret to inform you that Bertram Phillips, 11th Battalion, Middlesex Regiment, General Service, is ill at the 38th Field Ambulance in France, suffering from wounds and shock.
January 1st, 1916. Dear Mother.
I'm very sorry that I did not write before now, but we were in the trenches on Christmas Day and we had a lot to do. Sent to the hospital, so please don't send any letters to the company because I won't get them. Dear Mother, do not worry, I'll be all right. I was only hurt in the back.
January 6th, 1916. Dear Mother.
I've been in hospital 9 days now, lying in bed all the time, and I have a sore heel. I had it cut, and it's getting better.
January 20th, 1916. Dear Mother.
I'm quite well, and I came out of the hospital on Wednesday the 19th. You do not know how I am longing for a letter from you. Mother, I would like to know what the War Office said about me.
February 23rd, 1916. Dear Mother.
I'm sending you this letter to let you know that I have received your parcel. Dear Mother, we were in the trenches, and I was ill, and I went out, and now I'm in big trouble. I'll have to go before court. I will let you know in my next letter how I get on. Give my love to Father and Kate. Your loving son, Bertie.
Madam, I am directed to inform you that a report has been received from the War Office to the effect that Bertram Phillips, 11th Battalion, Middlesex Regiment, General Service, was sentenced after trial by court-martial to suffer death by being shot for desertion, and that the sentence was duly executed on the 20th of March, 1916. I am your obedient servant, P.G. Hanley, 2nd Lieutenant, Infantry Records.
General de Maudet had just been aroused from his sleep and was standing in the street as 12 soldiers and an NCO came around the corner. A firing party. My heart sank and a feeling of horror overcame me, for an execution was about to take place. General de Maudet gave a look, held up his hand, and the party halted. With his characteristic quick step, he went up to the doomed man. He asked what he had been condemned for. It was for abandoning his post. The general then began to talk to the man. Quite simply, he explained discipline to him. Abandoning your post was letting down your pals. More, it was letting down your country. He spoke of the necessity of example, how some could do their duty without prompting, but others, less strong, had to know and understand the supreme cost of failure. He told the condemned man that his crime was not trivial, not low, and that he must die as an example so that others should not fail. Surprisingly, the wretch agreed. The burden of infamy was lifted from his shoulder. He saw a glimmer of something, maybe redemption, in his own eyes. De Maudet went on, carrying the man with him to the comprehension that any sacrifice was worthwhile if it helped France. Yours is also a way of dying for your country, he said. The procession started again, but by now the victim was a willing one. The sound of the volley in the distance announced that it was over.
I want to go home. I want to go home. I don't want to go to the trenches no more, where whizzbang and shrapnel
to the hips, and above wet, as only the rain of this land can wet. Primarily because I've just come in from a funeral. And what a funeral. Tonight, or rather this morning, we laid away all that was mortal of Mac, the tightwad. I suppose that might sound irreverent to you, but that's how we knew him, tightwad. Here, life is cheap, and we joke of death. Why, it was only last night I reckoned to the fellas in the company mess how shocked people at home would be, could they but hear us. Albeit, that state does exist, and one grows callous. And it's only when we stand by and see a comrade laid in a shallow hole that the solemnity of the thing we hold so cheaply hit home. So tonight, amid a small forest of whitewashed crosses, we lay the body of Mac, a hero, a comrade, a friend indeed. As we bare our heads, the cadre recites in the dark the short, active service liturgy for the dead.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
We know the blanket is grey and red wool. We've seen so many. We know it's Mac, who last night came into our dugout and blithely said, "Cheer-o!" A few shovelfuls of earth, and the blanket's covered. The words cease. A whitewashed cross is stuck into the earth, a paper with his name and number nailed on, to await for the pioneer with his black paint. And the mourners move away. Now, I don't know if the foregoing conveys a picture or not, but somehow, this morning, as I sit awaiting the dawn, words fail to come. We try not to let the heart rule the head, but I'm afraid, somehow, right now, I miss Tightwad more than ever. Not because his going entails 1/3 more duty for me, not because for 1,000 reasons. Despite all his human frailties, I loved him. Just because somehow, when one has lived and trusted, fought and fed, weighed and found true measure for 18 months, the going tugs at the heartstrings.
Jimmy's mother
mail first to the fire command post that was dug into the bank near McCrae's. Then I crossed past the little cemetery to a raised farmhouse where the mess was located. I saw him sitting on an ambulance step, a pad on his knee. He looked up when I approached, but continued to write. He was my senior officer, second in command of the brigade, and I did not interrupt him. He wrote on for only 5 minutes more. Then, as I handed him his mail, he handed me his pad. His face was very tired, but calm as he wrote. He looked around from time to time, his eyes straying to Helmer's grave.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. Loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
They were summoned from the hillside. They were called in from the glen. And the country felt them ready at the stirring call for men. Let no tears add to their hardships as the soldiers pass along. And although your heart is breaking, make it sing this cheery song. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though the lads are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark cloud shining. Turn the dark clouds inside out till the boys come home.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's official. The last shot of the war was fired at 11 o'clock this morning. We're at peace.
There's a silver lining
The war is over. La guerre, it is fini, as the French say in half English and half French. The news came to us yesterday morning. It did not come as a surprise, for we more or less suspected it, and we're ready for it. All one can say now is thank God it's over.
Let's go outside and see what's going on. So the two of us went outside, and all of a sudden, bang! A shot came from up the street, got pierced through the back and through the heart, and he fell dead in my arms. It was not an accidental shot. It was a sniper. And if there had been two of them there, they would have got us both. I laid Pierce down and went in and told Major Ross that Pierce was dead. "The war's over," Ross said. "The war's over." "Well," I said, "I can't help that." "How then," Ross said, "to think that this would happen just when the war was over." We never thought about the war being over. Poor Pierce, he never knew that the war was over. Pierce was just doing his job.
Bells ringing, whistles blowing, crowds in the streets cheering. What is it? It's the armistice. The war's over. Germany's quit. Now at last, all is quiet on the Western Front. That for which we've toiled, struggled, and suffered for 4 years, that for which millions of men have died, has come at last. A feeling of sadness comes over me. Not that the war's over, but that I'm miles away. I missed the great experience of hearing the roar of the guns suddenly cease. I wonder what the lads in my old battalion are doing. I wonder how many are left.
When my dreamboat comes home, then my dreams no more will roam. I will meet you and greet you, hold you closely, my own. Moonlit waters will sing of the tender love you bring. We'll be sweethearts forever when my dreamboat comes home.
No more killing. No more mutilated men being carried to the rear. 4 years of it, and it seemed like 4 centuries. Suddenly, a strange procession starts from the hospital on the outskirts of Folkestone, heading towards the downtown section. Legless men propelled themselves in wheelchairs. Men with only one leg hobbled along on crutches. Sightless men groped their way as best they could. A man with only one leg guided one without eyes. The blinded one helping to support a cripple. Down to the city they went, this parade of the wreckage of war. Into the maelstrom of sound and rejoicing they plunged, eager to take part in this great celebration. Their sacrifices had made this demonstration possible, and they would not be denied their right to celebrate. You know, it was a reckless thing for those young wounded men to leave their beds and join the milling and jostling downtown crowd. For wounds that had begun to heal broke open again. But they were a reckless breed of men, men who had gone over the top into a hail of machine gun fire, who'd been through the fire of shrapnel and high explosives, men who had slept in the mud of the trenches and endured the miseries of hell, were not to be denied this opportunity of celebrating. Their only regret was that they were not up at the front, where they could have heard that great silence descend on the battlefield, with the rattle of the rifle and machine gun fire, the roar of artillery, and the crash of shells had been constantly in their ears for years.
When my dream love comes home, then my dreams no more will roam. I will meet you and greet you, hold you closely, my own. Moonlit waters will sing
I don't know which was worse, the war or the events that came after it, with unemployment and even ex-officers selling matches in Oxford Street. Yes, it was all over at last, and in 1919, when I looked at my father and brother and our 2 rooms that measured 14 by 14 and housed a family of 8, I said to myself, Tom, your king and country need you.
Does it matter? Losing your legs? For people will always be kind. And you need not show that you mind when people come in after hunting and gobble up their muffins and eggs. Does it matter? Losing your sight? There's splendid work for the blind. And people will always be kind. As you sit on the terrace remembering, and turn your face to the light, do they matter? The dreams of the pit? You can drink to forget and to be glad. And no one will say that you're mad. For they'll say that you fought for your country. And no one will worry a bit.
Do you remember the rats? And the stench of corpses rotting in the front of the frontline trench? Do you remember that hour of dim before the attack? And that anger, that blind compassion that seized and shook you then as you peered at the doomed and haggard faces of your men? Do you remember the stretcher cases? Lurching back with lolling heads and dying eyes. Those ashen gray masks of the lads who were once keen and kind and gay. And what of dawn coming? Dirty white, filled with the chill of a hopeless rain. Do you stop and ask yourself, is it going to happen again?
One soldier in the First World War was walking down the street, one arm off. Someone began commiserating with him. He said, I didn't lose it. I gave it.
Every November the 11th, my wife shines my medals, I dress myself up, and we go to the cenotaph to take part in the service. So many things go through my mind. All those men who were killed. How unnecessary. Why couldn't they have died an ordinary, natural death? It's a very terrible thing that a man has to give his life for his country. People don't understand what these men went through. They didn't realize what they were getting into. Maybe I was one of them. Anyway, we went. Some gave their lives, some gave their limbs, others their minds. People just don't really realize the sacrifice. They were living in constant fear of dismemberment, living worse than animals, often knee-deep in mud, filthy, lousy, hungry, tired, and terrified, for year after bloody year. Do you know, I feel very compassionate today towards any teenager who thinks November the 11th is just another holiday. I'd say to him, well, son, I don't blame you for feeling that way. You're young. And maybe if I were you, I'd feel the same way too. But if you've got a minute to spare, come and sit with me, and I'll tell you a thing or two. And I'd try to explain to him what these men had gone through. In this war, there were no winners. They were all victims. In war, generals may propose, but it's the common soldier who has to dispose. And we have to remember these fellows. I would go on. Suppose something happened in the world today, and your father had to go to war. How would you feel if he was killed in action? Or if he lost an arm, or a leg, or even his mind? Just think it over, chum, and consider yourself darn lucky to be born a Canadian, living in a free country, fought for not only by Canadians and Brits, but by Americans, Australians, and New Zealanders. They all helped to preserve the freedom you have today.
Did you have to fight the cockroaches, Nan? And when they brought you the telegram of John's heroic death at Mons, did you thank Madame for the 5 shillings? Making sure the fender gleamed, even as you cried your love goodbye? Were those years hard, Nan? The roaring 20s? The sighing 30s? You never said much. Your kids enjoyed them, but then it was their youth and they had to. What was it for you, Nan? Silence? Lonely? Perhaps better. Perhaps he would have died in the kitchen, belly full of beer. Did you cry in bed, Nan? And did your hair still long and soft and yellow when you held me? Did it lie uncaressed across the pillow? For the 60 years that left you with the memory of a husband's embrace. Well, for what it's worth, Nan, I'll remember. Remember all those things you didn't tell me and add them up. And seeing that the total was gentleness and kindness, was trust and innocence, was loneliness and sacrifice. Maybe, Nan, there was something in it after all.
Take your peaceful share of time, your despair. War's a bloody game.
Look up and swear by the green of day that you will never forget.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot in days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet in your name to lang syne. And Canada must never, never lag. And rising clear and high comes Canada's reply. We laid down the hammer and picked up the gun, put down the saw for the sword, ripped and rolled over our fighting behind. See where their blood is now poured. Dug up the treasure and put down the pen. March to the trumpet call. Britain is fighting for freedom, and Britain needs us all.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as the last part of our presentation this afternoon, we would like to honor some very special guests. We asked each and every one of the cast members to think what they might have learned when rehearsing and looking at this particular script, and to look at the sacrifices of the veterans and the people who went before us in a different light. And so they have put those thoughts on paper, and would like to present them to the names that have been supplied to us today. Cherish, I believe you start.
I'd like to thank veterans like Bob Blackmore.
Come on, boys, we're going to be here all day. Anyone?
I would like to thank veterans like Brent Taylor.
Brent Taylor? Next one.
I would like to thank veterans like George O'Coin.
Come on, gang, you've got to find these guys. They're older than you.
I'd like to thank veterans like Phil Diamond.
He's probably getting
I'd like to thank veterans like Mary Sullivan.
Here.
Here.
Race it, Nick. Come on, Nick. Go on.
I would like to thank veterans like Don Smith.
I'd like to thank veterans like Al Leadbeater.
I would like to thank veterans like Ray Tanner.
I would like to thank veterans like Curtis and Parker Beza.
I'd like to thank veterans like Fred Monket.
Somebody take it for him.
I'd like to thank veterans like Walter Brown. I would like to thank veterans like Gordon Hogan.
Tom, take this to Lord Owen.
I would like to thank veterans like Stan Appleby.
Okay. Corey?
I'd like to thank veterans like Norm Crew.
I'd like to thank veterans like Bill Belliard.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all veterans. Thank you.
Past and visitors, it's indeed one of the greatest pleasures today to be able to recognize the youth of our community for what they have given to members of our community who have sacrificed so much for our country. And today, I feel all of you must feel very proud to be Nova Scotian. And I thank you for your gift of entertainment to the community, of your gift of understanding and respect for the men and women who serve this country. And I would like particularly to recognize the Young Company Productions Association. Before I do, I would like to give a special hand for Noelle Lucas, our musician. The fine music that we heard today has inspired our young people. Your voices are beautiful, and I think it's your personality that comes through when you sing is very special. And as well, I think in reading the program you would understand this, but it is because of the artistic direction of John Frederick Brown that the actual script for this came to be, because John is the writer of this. So John, very special congratulations. And to Dave as well, the organization of today, and I know how much you put your heart and soul into every one of the troop. It makes it very special, so I thank you as well. On either side, I'd like to present to the Young Company Production Association, in recognition of Young Company's moving performance of Mudsongs, a musical remembrance of World War I, and an appreciation of their ongoing commitment to pay tribute to the soldiers who fought in the Great War and in keeping their memory alive for future generations. And So,
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for God Save the Queen.